So you're interested in heading to Buenos Aires to live like a king while you fill up on cheap wine, cheap steak, and maybe dance a little tango? Well, it might actually cost you a little bit more than you realize, because things have gotten expensive, and fast. But luckily for you, I lived in Buenos Aires for a month in 2025, and I tracked every single peso I spent. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what I spent, and by the end, you'll know how much it'll really cost to live the Argentinian dream like you've been thinking about. Also, after I go through my numbers, I'll give you 3 crucial money tips that you need to know before heading to the city. We have a lot to cover, so let's get into it. So I don't bore you with every single transaction. I broke everything up into 7 different categories. That way you can look at the categories and adjust for yourself based on how you like to spend. The 7 categories are accommodation, groceries, eating out, experiences, health and wellness, transportation, and other, which is just everything else. I'll go through each category and then I'll total everything up at the end. For context, I was in Buenos Aires for exactly 31 days with my girlfriend, from mid-January to mid-February, which is peak tourist and peak summer season in Argentina, so keep that in mind. I'll share the results in terms of US dollars based on the average exchange rate Visa was giving me on my card at the time, which was 1,092 pesos per dollar. More info about that in the tips section at the very end. There's also a few caveats to keep in mind as well, but I'll explain that when we get there. Alright, so first off, accommodation. We stayed in a 2-bed, 2-bath Airbnb in the heart of Palermo, Hollywood the entire month. And we paid $1,563.69, or $781.85 per person. This comes out to $25.22 per person per day. This is a category that can definitely vary a lot depending on your preferences and how you go about finding a place. So there are some important things to note here. First of all, we were looking specifically for 2-bedroom places so that we'd have space to work and be on calls. If you're traveling solo or don't need a second room, you could probably find a place for less. But at the same time, we chose an apartment that wasn't brand new and it wasn't super modern or anything like that. So it was a bit cheaper for that reason. We also booked for the entire month, so we got a slight discount for that through Airbnb. If you booked the exact same spot for less time, you'd likely be paying a bit more per night. And I actually did an apartment tour for the place that we stayed in, so I'll link to that video at the end of this one and in the description if you're interested in seeing exactly what $1,500 got us. I have a few tips for saving money on accommodation that we didn't even use this time, but I'll get into that later on. Let's keep moving. So the next category is groceries. This is a category that actually surprised us. Things were much more expensive than we remember from the year before due to political and economic changes in Argentina for the last few years. In total, we spent $754.61 on groceries, or $377.31 per person. This comes out to $12.17 per person per day. We shop mostly at local grocery stores in Palermo, and sometimes we walked a bit further out to go to the Jumbo, which had a much larger selection and better prices. There was also a weekly farmers market on our street, which was awesome, where we tried to get most of our produce. Now category 3, eating out. This includes all pre-made food and drinks not from a store, including takeout empanadas, the occasional coffee, tips, and also food delivered on Rappi. In total, we spent $1,615.95, or $807.98 per person eating out. This comes to $26.06 per person per day. Yeah, kinda a lot, honestly. This is what I'm saying. It's not as affordable as it used to be. This also doesn't really include breakfast because we had breakfast at home pretty much every day. We also cooked at home a decent amount, as you can see by our grocery bill. To be fair, almost a quarter of this was from 2 dinners. One Michelin sushi restaurant that we went to, which was $210. And also my parents came to visit us in Buenos Aires, so I treated them out to a nice dinner as well, which was another $150. So if you deduct those, the new totals are $1,263.03 or $631.52 per person, which comes out to $20.37 per person per day. All right, moving on to the experiences category. This included any kind of activities that we did. For example, some private bachata classes at about $30 per class, a paint and sip meetup we did, and tickets for the Recoleta Cemetery for $16 per person, which I highly recommend. Besides a couple other things we did, that was basically it as far as experiences. We were both working a ton that month, so honestly we didn't get out much aside from restaurants. Stacy and I both spent a month in Buenos Aires last year, which is actually where we met. We did more fun touristy experiences that time. This year we were mostly just living and working. I actually tracked all my spending in Buenos Aires last year as well, so let me know if I should do another spending breakdown. In total, we spent $177.84, or $88.92 per person on experiences, which comes out to be a whopping $2.87 per person per day. For the health and wellness category, we spent $278.81, or $139.41 per person. This comes out to $4.50 per person per day. The bulk of this was a package of 4 massages I bought at the beginning of the month. They were 90 minutes each, and I went every week, and it was heavenly. That was 180,000 pesos, or $165 at the time. If you're curious where I went, let me know in the comments and I can find it. Pretty much the rest of this was tips from masseuse, some random pharmacy items, and a month-long gym membership we got, which was 45,000 pesos, or $41 each person. That was at a gym called Mr. Garage. I don't know if it's everyone's vibe, but it was close by and I liked it. Moving right along to category 6, transportation. We spent a total of $92.75 on transportation, or $46.38 per person. This was exclusively Ubers and ride sharing. This comes out to $8.43 per ride on average. Note that this includes Ubers to and from the airport, which were $20 to $25, and also to and from La Boca, which is an area a bit further away, for about $10. Most rides for getting around the area were about $3 to $4 on average. And lastly, the other category, which is everything else, which is basically just this souvenir cap that we bought in La Boca for 15,000 pesos, or $13.73. Yeah, we're not big shoppers. And that's all the categories. If the drummer is ready back there, we spent a total of $4,614.84, or $2,319.84 per person, which comes out to $74.83 per person per day for the entire month in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Honestly, not too bad in my opinion. Obviously much cheaper than we could live at home in the US, and I mean, we were living a pretty good life. Spacious apartment, eating out often, sipping good wine, weekly massages. You can't get a lifestyle like that on less than $2,500 in a lot of places around the world. But at the same time, it is getting noticeably more expensive, even compared to 1 year ago. Something that we did notice being in Buenos Aires this year compared to last year was the increase of people on the street asking for money, especially when you're outside eating in a restaurant and people coming up to your table. I'm not any kind of expert, but I know Argentina has been facing a lot of economic changes in the last few years with the President Milei shaking a lot of things up. I know there are some Argentinos watching, so please feel free to share your experience living in Argentina with us in the comments. I'm very curious to hear from you. Also, what are some things you want visitors to know before visiting your country? Let us know. Now, as promised, since you made it this far in the video, I want to share some crucial money tips that you should know before visiting Buenos Aires. First, some ways to save money on accommodation. Number 1 is you could choose a different neighborhood. Palermo is the trendy, more international neighborhood, but you could likely save some money on accommodation in another neighborhood, like Belgrano or San Telmo. Number 2, you could find a local spot not really marketed to tourists. Think off Airbnb. There's Facebook groups for this, and there's also posts in real estate offices if you just walk the street in Buenos Aires. So what you could do is you could book an Airbnb for just a week or so with the sole purpose of trying to find somewhere more long-term. Number 3, you could also travel to Buenos Aires outside of peak times. I went during the peak of summer, which is peak tourist season, and yes, that means peak prices. December, January, February is peak summer, so booking in another month could probably save you some money. Number 4, even on Airbnb, message places and ask for discounts, especially if you're staying longer term. Most people are happy to work with you, even more if it's off-peak times. I have some tips on exactly how to do that, but I don't have time to get into this in this video. So leave a comment and I can talk about it another time. All right, my second tip has to do with currency conversion and using cash. As you may know, Argentina's economy is interesting, to say the least. Without getting too into it, here's what you need to know. There are a bunch of different conversion rates, both official and unofficial. The main ones you have to be concerned with are the blue dollar rate, which is the highest rate. This is the rate that you get on the black market exchanging dollars for pesos. Basically, the government limited exchanging out pesos and gave a terrible rate, so locals use these black or blue markets to shield their money from inflation of the peso. The second rate is the MEP rate, also known as the Mercado Electrónico de Pagos, or electronic payment market. This one is slightly lower than the blue dollar rate, but still very good. So the third one is the official rate set by the government, which is the lowest. But these days, it's actually much closer to the blue dollar rate, so it's less of an issue than it was in the past. The typical advice you'll find online is to bring a bunch of physical US dollars with you to Argentina, exchange it on the black market, and then spend cash as much as possible to get the best rates. This is no longer the best way to do it. Now paying with credit card gives you the MEP rate, which is very close to the blue dollar rate, plus with the added benefit of not having to lug around stacks and stacks of cash. Especially because Argentina only recently introduced a 20,000 peso bill, which is now their highest bill, which is still worth less than $20. When we were getting cash, we had stacks of 1,000 peso bills going this high. I'm not kidding. So here's the bottom line. If you just ignored everything I just said, here's what you do. Use your credit card to make purchases whenever possible. You can use Visa's exchange rate calculator to show the current rate each day. I'll link that in the description. And also make sure you have pesos on hand to use for tipping and occasions when card isn't accepted. Note that most places don't allow you to leave a tip with your credit card like you might be used to. So always have pesos on you for tipping, especially because even a small tip makes a big difference for service workers. Also, don't tip with $1 or $5 US bills. Ideally tip in pesos because locals have a hard time exchanging these small denominations into their local currency to spend. And my third tip is about getting cash. So for the cash that you do need, you could bring US dollars and go to the blue market on Calle, Florida, and shop around for the best exchange rates. However, there's a much simpler and easier way. Go on Western Union's website or mobile app, and you can send yourself pesos from another bank account or debit card. I think you can also use a credit card. Then you can walk to one of the many offices and pick up your cash. Here are some key things to avoid. Don't get cash from ATMs. You get a low limit, bad rates, and high fees. Also, when you get cash out from Western Union, don't request a bunch of cash out at the same time. Western Union's offices won't have enough to give you. We learned this the hard way because we tried to take advantage of the free transfer promotion, and we walked to, I think, 4 or 5 different Western Union locations, and none of them had enough cash to give us. Plus, we held up the line waiting for them to count out like 1,000,000 pesos, and that's not even an exaggeration. It was a bit awkward. And lastly, don't use a debit card to pay for things directly. You get lower security, and people have reported not getting the same rate that you would get from a credit card, even if it's a Visa debit card. If you do need to use your debit card, you're better off using it to get cash at Western Union and then spending the cash instead. And that's it. That's everything we spent in a month in Buenos Aires, Argentina, plus 3 crucial money tips. I hope this was helpful. It took me a long time to put this video together, so a like and a nice comment would mean the world to me. And let me know if you're planning on going to Argentina. Did we spend more than you thought? Less? Where did we waste our money? Let us know. And finally, if you want to see more videos similar to this, subscribe. Thanks for watching.